Good evening, everyone. I'd like to declare this meeting of the Special Audit Risk and Governance Committee open at 5:31 p.m. And I'd like to welcome members of staff and committee members and acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional land of the Noongar people, and I pay my respects to them, to their elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to advise everyone that the meeting is being audio recorded in accordance with council policy. No other visual or audio recording of this meeting by any other means is allowed. I'd like to also acknowledge the presence of our auditor, Reagan Lau, who will say a few words, I believe, during the deputations section.
Madam Presiding Member, we do have an apology from Councillor D'Agostino as well. I forgot to let you know that before the meeting started. My apologies.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So in terms of item 1, attendances and apologies, we have an apology from Councillor D'Agostino. Has anyone heard from Ms. Newby? I didn't see. Okay. So we have an apology from Ms. Newby. Item 2 is public question time, of which there's nil. Item 3, deputations. I'd like to invite Reagan Lau, our auditor, to say a few words.
Thanks, Chair. Councillors and audit committee members, hi. Reagan from the Office of the Audit General. I was just told by Fraser to have some informal address, but I think it's very formal. So I'm not sure what else you want to know, but basically I've taken over the audit this year from Aaron Manek, the director. So we worked in the same team. So this year he was acting in another role and I took over the audit, and the decision was made that I continue audit with AMD being the contract auditors for another year, and then he will retender for happy to take any questions.
Councillors, committee members, has anyone got any questions of Reagan? Councillor Coles.
Thank you. So my name's Councillor Coles. We've had a consultant in the background do a review of some workings at the Shire. One particular thing they've identified is some concerns with the waste transfer station in Mundijong. Did your report go into details in terms of potential loss of earnings from the Shire in relation to that facility?
As part of the audit, we do not audit in a way that one can answer. So basically, we would audit what expense going through the facility, but not in a way whether it's valid or not.
Okay, so you have no concerns as the auditor about the workings of that facility at the moment?
So when we issue our opinion, assess the whole entity as a whole, basically, I would say that part of the operation that would drag the whole time.
Okay.
Financial liability.
And when you do your report, are you looking at only financial risk? You don't look at workplace health and safety. Is it only financial?
Yes, that's correct. Financial audit.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Lau. Moving on to item 4, declaration of committee members and officers' interest, of which there's nil. Item 5, receipt of minutes or reports and consideration of adoption of recommendations from committee meetings held since the previous council meetings, which there's nil. 6, reports for consideration. 6.1, annual financial statements and audit report 2021-2022. Are there any questions in relation to this item? Ms. Berry?
Thank you. I have a few questions. There were quite a few issues brought up in the 22 year that were very similar to the 21 year. I do see in a lot of the management comments that there's been steps taken to overcome some of those. How confident are we that in 23 we're not going to come up with a lot of the same ones again?
Could I ask the Director of Corporate Services to respond to that?
Given throughout the report, we made comment about the inexperienced nature of our finance team. Initially, I'd just like to refer these questions to our Manager of Finance as much for a training exercise. If you would like more, after the Manager of Finance has finished speaking, if you'd like, or any of the members of the committee would like to get more colour, please ask again, or if I think she's missed something, I'll jump in if you like.
So in answer to your question, myself, Manager of Finance and the Financial Accountant started in the Shire in April 2022, which was obviously at the end of coming to the end of the financial year. Before we started, we'd had some significant gaps in the finance team with up to four of the senior managers. So I think the annual audit really reflects that there were some gaps in the system, which I think the team really took on board with what they could in this service presented to them. Both myself and the financial accountant are actually new to local government. We've had quite a learning curve in the accounts. As you say, some of the management comments that were raised in the 2022 audit were very similar to the previous audit and some of the interims as well, which we haven't actually been part of. We've really taken those on board, and you'll see with some of the management comments, we've already managed to plug some gaps in those areas. The cash flow. At heart, there's probably some things that may come up again that we are trying our best to implement. We've lost some staff over the year that we're trying to plug the gaps, but we have quite a high confidence that we will be able to coming close to.
We've got some further questions.
Yes. With the expense accruals, you say that there's a cut-off of mid-July to enable completion of year-end. Is this causing problems with being able to get the information together in time, such a 2-week period? Is that something that should be extended?
Apologies. So with the year-end accrual process, we have to take a point in time to cut off the procedures to enable us to basically close the accounts down. So if we were to extend that, that actually extends the period of close down and the other transactions we need to start doing in the next financial year. So over the course of our experience, that 2-week window is quite a significant window to get all those invoices in for payment. We do communicate to the organisation around the importance of closing off purchase orders, ensuring that all the invoices are come through to us in a timely manner so we can get those closed and raised and paid. We did consider extending that time frame, but we felt that actually the implications of that far outweighed the issues we were seeing from the management comments, the auditor comments, apologies. Even though the dollar amount was quite high, the actual number of invoices were quite low. So if the same thing happened again this financial year, it may be another 6, 7, 8 invoices, but they could quite easily be of a very significantly lower amount.
Do you have a third question, Ms. Berry?
If I may. With the non-operating grants, subsidies and contributions, they're significantly higher than 2021 year. What is the level that these are expected to be moving forward?
We have a page number, please.
Page 7, attachment 1.
Yeah. Okay, so this
Can
actually
you just ask the question again, please, Ms. Brett?
So in the 21-22 accounts, we actually saw some unbudgeted DCP contributions come through on the capital grant subsidy and contribution lines, and they were received for the Byford DCP, the CIDCP, and West Mundijong DCP public open space. You will see that there's actually a corresponding expenditure that actually nets those off. So even though it looks a significant increase, the expenditure nets it off to zero, and we would be maintaining the kind of the prior years going forward.
One more, if I may. Page 31, in the notes to the cash flow. Assets received substantially less than fair value, 14.6 million. How can that be so high? What's happened there?
So the assets received significantly lower than fair value are actually our gifted assets. So there are infrastructure, our parks, gardens, etc., that are transferred from the developers to ourselves. So we actually received these in theory for free, as well at zero value, but they go into the books at their asset value. We've made some real headway in the asset space of how we're capturing the data in a more timely manner and putting that into the system, which has seen quite a significant increase in this financial year for the assets that were received and the time in which we are allocating them within the accounts. You'll see in previous management comments that was something that was picked up, our timeliness of putting assets into the system. So it's twofold really. We saw a significant amount of assets come through, but we also dealt with them in a timely manner.
Was that your final question, Miss Berry?
I think so.
Are there any further questions from any councillors, committee members? Councillor Duggan?
Thanks, Madam Chair. If I could just go to page 8 of the agenda where there was a significant rating for the fair value of infrastructure assets because it was based on 2018 valuation report. Can I just have it confirmed from the Director of Infrastructure that we have actually looked at an updated assessment of our assets, please? Thanks, CEO.
Sorry, Councillor, is that number 4, fixed asset reconciliation?
Yes, so it's on in the agenda body itself, page 8 of 14, under number 4, policies and procedure review, final audit management report, where there was a significant rating for fair value of infrastructure assets because it states further down that the ratings were based on the 2018 valuation report. And I was just wondering if there had been intentions to update the infrastructure assets valuing, please.
Yes, indeed. That's 95% complete at the moment. We've actually gathered all of the new inventory condition that's required. Quite literally drove all of the roads with a camera, and we're working on the valuation of that. So as of the 30 June this financial year, we will have up-to-date valuation numbers.
Thanks, Director.
Mr. Thurrock?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question in relation to the point made about the high staff turnover. Look, the market is pretty hard at the moment for employment, but high staff turnover does create a risk for business continuity, which I think we're seeing some of the effects of with the items in the audit. What is the council looking at doing to either retain staff or looking at why staff have been leaving?
Could I ask that the CEO responds to the question?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Caselli. We've done a lot of work in this space over the last 6 or 8 months particularly, and we are starting to see a downward trend in the turnover numbers that are happening. We've surveyed staff and understood what staff are feeling and thinking, and we've responded to what they've said. I think the environment where people are working from home and on teams has meant that people feel connected inside their team, but they haven't necessarily felt connected to the entire organisation. So we've been structuring more social activities and more things to do with a point of getting to know you more. And that's working very well, I think. And we've changed the format of our monthly staff catch-ups. And the council's investing significantly in improving the condition that staff work in. At the depot arriving today, hopefully, I'm looking for someone to nod their head. No one's looking at me. Hopefully today the new dong has arrived, Reza, at the depot for office and amenities at the depot. And this month's council meeting agenda is a request to go to tender for an upgrade of toilet and shower and end-of-trip facilities for the admin staff, which has been a big priority. So we're working through both the soft sort of connection things, and we're also working through the physical environment that people are working in and improving those. There's still a lot of work to do in that space. We're also developing an organisational roadmap, and we've been involving staff in workshops on values and culture and purpose and new ways of working. And so we've had a big engagement with staff. And today we had a workshop with staff about the new strategic community plan for the council, and more staff turned up than we had chairs for, so we had to rearrange that. So I think we're making progress in that space, I would say. But there's more to do. It's that sort of stuff, but we are seeing some improvements.
Fantastic. A follow-up question, if I may. Are you seeing staff, is it in a particular area that you're struggling with staffing, or is it across the organisation?
It's mostly been that's a good question. It's mostly been in lower areas across the organisation rather than necessarily managers or directors' positions. There's been a lot of turnover at the depot, and we're addressing some of that with some other issues and other work we're doing, reviewing the operations centre and the waste transfer station. I think as Councillor Coles was alluding to a bit earlier on. And the turnover is really occurring in people that have been with the organisation less than 2 years. It seems to be 2 years seems to be a magical mark. If you survive 2 years and then you enjoy it and you stay, if you come along and you think, oh my God, I don't want to be here anymore, I want to go somewhere else. So we've reviewed our induction program, making that a better thing. So we've really been analysing the data around where that turnover is occurring and what's driving that, and that's probably the area I'd sort of say. And we've also brought in some things as well, like alcohol and drug testing, which has seen some people leave the organisation at the depot.
Probably not for the worst thing there. That's fine. No, thank you.
Councillor Coles, did you have a question?
I've got several. Thanks. So in relation to attachment 1, and maybe it's my naivety of these types of things, but on under cash and cash equivalents, which is page 13 of attachment 1, there seems to be a significant difference in cash at hand that we had last year and what we have this year. It can probably be explained, but is it possible to sort of explain that, specifically the cash and cash equivalents, and then cash on hand, term deposits, etc., etc.? So I think it's dropped. It's actually increased by, current assets have increased by 50%. But certainly it appears that cash in hand has dropped significantly. So maybe that's an accounting thing that can be explained to me.
Can I ask that the Manager of Finance respond to that?
So this is purely in relation to our term deposits. Any term deposits that have that basically we invest for 3 months or less are classed as cash in hand. We had quite a significant amount of those in the last financial year. We have changed the way we are dealing with our term deposits, and the majority of them now are actually 12 months or above. So that's where you're seeing the decrease of the cash at hand, but you'll see the corresponding offset, as you said, in the financial assets, because that's where any term deposits that are 3 months or more, that's where that sits.
Okay, thank you. And whilst it's outside the scope of this report, I was just wondering whether it can be confirmed. It appeared that creditors weren't paid on time for the month of April. Can that be explained to the committee why that didn't happen?
So we are accounts payable position. The lady that was in that actually left at very short notice on sick, and we've had a gap in once again a gap in the team that we've been trying to cover across the team. This just meant that normally we pay all our creditors on a Thursday, but that particular week we'd had a significant amount of invoices, which actually totaled over $1.5 million, that when we were checking, etc., there was errors that we needed to ensure was correct. So unfortunately, the payment was delayed by 2 business days.
Okay.
And we are working, and apologies. We've got 2 additional members of staff in that space now to try and mitigate against that.
Okay, and I guess respectfully, when you look at I suppose it's not liquidity of the organisation, but when people aren't paid on time, it is a concern and a risk. Are you confident that won't happen again?
As I said, we have put plans in place and additional staff. I'm very confident that this will not happen again. Can I just reiterate that all the staff were paid as per normal on that fortnight? Unfortunately, it was the creditors and the councillors that had that delay.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Ms Berry?
Sorry, just one more. With this report being done so late in the year, obviously due to extenuating circumstances this year, is the Shire going to be liable for any kind of penalties or anything with the lateness?
Certainly not to my knowledge, no. But, we're within our compliance requirements.
Councillor Mack?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to follow up, I guess, on the question that Councillor Coles had about the cash accounts and taking on board what you said. I'm just looking at page 6 of the report, which just goes into the general cash flow from financing activities. And then at the very bottom of that has the cash and cash equivalents at the end of the year, and the fact that we're running it. What was budgeted to have cash at 13.3 million, we're running at 5.2. Is that normal to be so off what we budgeted for and having sort of less cash? Is that telling us the same figure that you mentioned before about the what term deposits are in place, or how do we sort of describe that figure?
Can I ask that the Manager of Finance respond to the question?
Yes, so as discussed before, the cash at hand relates to the term deposits that are accessible within 90 days. We have changed the way we are investing, and we are now investing in 12-month blocks. But how we actually invest means that we have a term deposit come to fruition every single month. So if we needed the cash, we have access to that on a monthly basis. So you'll see, once again, as you're saying, yes, we had a budget of $13 million. We now have 5. We haven't lost that cash. We are just investing it in a different way to secure better interest rates and basically to try and get more back from the banks, etc. Sorry.
I'd like to add a little bit more colour with that. It's actually a good news story. So I guess everybody's aware with the rising interest rates over the last little while, we were achieving less than 1% return on our term deposits, but very early on, kudos to our new Manager of Finance. They spotted that if we were to extend the due date on our term deposits, they were offering like significantly higher rates long before interest rates started to rise. So we were actually achieving 5% yield on our term deposits when cash rates were still very, very low, like 1%. So it is actually a good news story for us. But it does, the accounting treatment of those investments are treated differently.
As if I just add some more to that as well, Madam Chair, that is that if I draw your attention, councillors and committee members, to page 11 of the report, which summarises the overall financial performance of the organisation. So you'll see, in fact, from 2021 to 2022, our financial health indicator has gone from 69 to 73. So if members of the committee are concerned that the decrease in actual cash available is some sign of the financial health, I just point you to that figure, that in fact overall we're improving financially because we're spending other people's money on renewing our assets.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Mr. Mack?
Sorry, if I can follow up then. Thank you. If I can just follow up then, so just I guess the other part to my question was around, is there a risk with like how little cash at hand can we have available, and what is our risk at applying a lot closer with that figure?
We have an investment policy. We are inside the investment policy. I think we have pretty good insight to the cash flow requirements, historical cash flow requirements of the organisation. The risk could be that if we were called for an unusual payment in a month that we could be caught short. But I think the buffer that we have in place is more than outweighs the gain in the additional interest earnings that we're able to achieve by having that longer investment timeframe.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Can I have a mover? Thank you, Mr. Cirilli. Is there someone happy to second the officers? Thank you, Ms. Berry. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 7, motions of which notice has been given, of which there's nil.
Sorry, presiding member, can I just ask a question? And it's a question at this stage. I haven't worded or thought of a motion, but I have some concerns about the presentation that was given to us the week before last or last week from the consultant, particularly the waste transfer station. And I guess my question is, it would be prudent, there's a significant risk in what we were told. I'm just thinking it'd be prudent for a report to come to the Audit, Risk and Governance Committee. So is that likely to happen? Maybe I can ask the CEO, because I think there's significant risk to the agency or the organisation with what was said.
Certainly, Madam President, there'll be a report coming to council. If there's aspects of that we want to take to the Audit Committee, we can. We're dealing with those risks as part of that report. That will update probably our significant risk register as an organisation, which comes back to this group on a quarterly basis. So I think you'll see some updating of that in the next report to the ordinary meeting of the committee, if that makes sense. So yes, we're capturing it. We haven't presented it as a special report, but we'll be coming back to council with the recommendations to address those issues, and there'll be some ongoing follow-up, which this group will have some visual.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Item 8 is urgent business, of which there's nil. So I declare, being there no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 5:59 p.m. Thank you for